all prior payments of interest instead toward principal. So now, what happens in the case of this home? It's in foreclosure after 20 years. You might have a 30-year note. You might be holding a 30-year debt. So you've got 10 years of payment, and you've already paid for the home 2.4 times over. Under the transition to mathematically perfected economy, you're credited. You've paid the house. You're no longer in foreclosure. Now,
that leads on to my question. What happens to the consumer that's stuck there? Okay, they've paid off on the $100,000 house. They've paid off $200,000. They're $100,000 ahead, judging by this system, right?
Yeah.
What happens to that money then? Are they given it?
No.
Or,
if we wanted to be given it, we needed to do this a long time ago, in which case we would never have lost it. The thing is, we can only rectify a current state as much as is right. And so we have basically two objectives to meet in a transition to mathematically perfected economy. The first is to refinance all debt under mathematically perfected economy, counting all prior payments of interest instead toward principal, only to the extent, and I've simplified this for my explanation because all these things are defined perfectly well in the mandate, but only to the extent that the balance is resolved. Because if we restored all the money that's ever been paid in interest to everyone, we would have this unbelievably humongous sum of circulation. Now, it's true that a crime has been perpetrated against us, and though that reflects our losses, but we would actually have further losses, because if we restored this circulation to ourselves, it would corrupt the value of all property, and in fact, it would likewise subvert our purposes of mathematically perfected economy. It would actually make it possible for circulatory inflation to exist. So it can't be done because it has detrimental consequences to us. Excuse me. In effect, what we have to do at this point in time is, if everyone's been asleep at the wheel, and I've been advocating mathematically perfected economy for 43 years, and nobody's been listening, and now that people are, there's more plagiarists of my work than, you can imagine, all deviating from the only principles which can save us. Well, the problem has really been imposed upon you by you yourself, by your apathy, by your disinterest, that you might want all that interest back. Well, it got multiplied into further indebtedness, and further indebtedness, and further indebtedness. And that's the state of affairs. We're resolving that indebtedness. But if we gave all the interest back, it would result in an inflationary circulation, which would subvert many, 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 many vital issues. If all of us were suddenly just given, let's just call it $10 million apiece.
I wouldn't mind.
No, you might. You might not think you would mind at first. But then all of us would be so wealthy in cash, currency. I don't like to say capital because, in truth, this is a rejection of capitalism, which is a system of exploitation.
Mm-hmm.
We're rejecting exploitation here. But if all of us were given $10 million, who's going to go to work? Who's going to produce anything? We'd all have all this money, but we wouldn't have any reason to produce. So all of our all of the things we need to consume to maintain our lifestyle are going to disappear because nobody's, nobody's replacing them. Nobody's going to go out and pick apples next year or peaches or pears or, raise cattle. Why? I'm rich. I don't have any, all my debts are resolved. I don't have anything to pay. I sit back. You see? So there are negatives to realize on the other side of the equation too. So in truth, well, it might be difficult to understand, but if you evaluate these things yourself, you'll see that would never work. So we're resolving our debts by counting all prior payments of interest instead toward principal, which itself will eliminate most of the debt in the world. There will be very little debt left. What's more, instead of paying $1,000 a month for your $100,000 house, if you have any balance, it will likely be more according to the scale of $1,000 a year or $83.33 a month. So while little debt will remain, likewise the cost of servicing the remaining debt will be reduced to approximately 12 times as much in general. The other thing that we're doing then is once we've treated debt as best as we can, which means we can't restore all the interest that's been ever, paid by your family, for instance, to the remaining members of your family or something like that. It's just something that's impractical to do because it would result in a tremendous circulation, which would defeat our purposes. We do need to continue producing. We do need to resolve our debts to, the extent that we can rightly do so. But what we do then after that, there's one other thing, and that is that we look at the remaining circulation then, and we look at the remaining value of all our property, and we credit that, the difference, to the accounts of the people. And this is the extent then that we can rightly do what you've suggested to do. So basically, this would be restored to the accounts of the people according to a formula where, for instance, as I had suggested earlier, let's say a society decides to make savings of half of your income mandatory if you're going to work half of your adult life and then be retired over the remaining half of your adult life on average. Well, so we would save so much each year on average, accumulating the greatest magnitude of savings at the end of our working lifespan, and which would be depleted afterward. And what we do by living on into the future, and what we do is we divide the population into that for each, and then apportion it back to the accounts of the people according to what stage they are in their life. So whatever age you are, for instance, in saving during your working lifespan, you would have accumulated this much, and that's what you're going to get. An older person who is still working would be given more, and a person, and in part, you understand, this is to alleviate the cost of supporting an older generation, which is imposed wrongly upon younger generations now, disproportionately owing to disproportionate, populations. People used to have, 10 kids in a family and whatnot. So, of course, an unsustainable system can work for a while to the benefit of that generation, but if the next their progeny had in general one children per family, of course it isn't going to work for that parent generation. So this system of compulsive saving of compelled saving is the only sustainable approach to the issues. And of course, even if we're forcing a person to save um, um, half their earnings. They're still 12 times as liquid. They're just dedicating it to something that is truly going to be returned to them, and in which is in their possession the whole while, can't even be deprived from them. And so, while that might mean that you're 6 times as liquid now, it makes, because of the difference, it means that you're 6 times as liquid in the future from your savings, which you wouldn't have been at all otherwise.
Okay, cool. That's pretty much covered that one. Mike, if you don't mind, we're just going to take a quick break here.
Sure.
Play a little bit of music, and then we'll be straight back into it, okay?
Okay, good.
Cool. Now, for anyone out there that doesn't know, guys, you can contact us here on Skype. Just add the address onesky.radio. That's ONESKY.radio. And I'm not spelling radio for you. Mike, can you spell radio?
Backwards.
No, that'll confuse me even.
OIDAR.
Hang on, let me... That's right, actually. Fair play. Okay, so we'll play a little bit of music, guys, and we'll be back with you very shortly. First one up, suitably enough, is Aloe Black's I Need $1. We have Mike back with us. Mike, thanks for sticking around.
Glad to do it.
Good stuff. And we've had another couple of people join us, and they've all said hello. And Mike, a mutual friend of ours, who we spoke to last night, has said hello. I don't know if you can remember who that was.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
So I got to say a big shout out to Jane over in Doncaster, who's tuned our way eventually. She finally decided to come on and grace us with her presence. But anyway, let's get back to what we were talking about. And Mike, if you don't mind, what I'm going to do is, for people who are struggling to follow this, I'm just going to use an example that a mutual friend of ours gave to me when I was first introduced to it.
Sure.
And what that example was based on a small island with 2 people. There was Mike and there was Robbie. Now, Mike was the financial controller, and he had a hold of all the money. Now, there was only €100 for him to spend, or for him to distribute, and I required €100 for this and that and the other. But he told me, I can take that €100, but I must repay it with 10% interest every year. That's fine, no problem. So after the first year, I give him back the €10, I give him back the 10%, which would be €1, so that's €11 I give him back. Now I still owe €90, but there's only 89 left in circulation. Would I be correct in saying that one, Mike?
Yes, in general, that's a simplified form of calculating interest. The banks usually do it an even far more criminal way. When you make that first $1,000 payment on your $100,000 home, $999 goes toward interest. So they stack it up on interest, in the initial payments. So you would probably, be accumulating more costs than you would imagine from a straight 10% calculation as you've done. But that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
It'll illustrate the principle, yeah.
Basically, it's just illustrating the point that with a system with interest in place in a situation where there's such a currency, it's impossible for it to be self-sustainable or sustainable in any manner.
Well, that's what this obfuscation of the explanation of the obfuscation of the currency concurs with, but it explains exactly how and why.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, if you needed that money in circulation, likely there wouldn't be just 2 of us. There would be more. And the way that you were going to earn whatever you did would be working, producing whatever you did. Others would be doing the same, and it would be circulating between all of you. And while it was necessary for that to circulate between all of you, each you might have borrowed so much into circulation. And each of you paid $10,000 out of circulation, the first year. You see, is what's happening. Well, during the course of the year, well, every time